Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. It is January 1st, 2023. We're in the shed. I'm gonna work on a little project here for Kristen. Same one, by the way, that we put the loft in. That's my probably most boring, yet most viewed video because apparently people don't know how to put lofts in sheds. That's the best I kind of got on it anyway, but I'll link that, I think, up top somewhere. But anyway, quick project on Kristen for the kids, toys and stuff, organization. So let me show you what we're going to get into. So I thought I'd go over my process here when I go about building something like this to satisfy Kristen's requests. And I almost always start with either a hand drawing or an AutoCAD drawing, depending on the complexity of the project, especially since I have access to AutoCAD through work. So we have plastic storage bins that are 13 by 17 by 18 inches tall. Those are approximate measurements because they were hard to measure. And I have 9 by 13 wooden Melissa and Doug food tray toy things for the kids. Those are exact, so I need to oversize that compartment a little bit. So if I do my 13 by 17 in a top view here, I can slide 10 inches to give myself some room on the 9 and keep my 13s, and I'll actually probably go 15 just because it's a nice number and gives us a little extra depth to play with. And if I'm making that out of 1/2 inch plywood, then I got 1.5 inches in plywood, or 12 millimeter plywood, but whatever, metric, and 27 inches there, so out to out will be 28.5. This side for the shelving, I've got a full back so the kids can't push stuff through it. Whereas since this side's plastic bins, I'll leave it open. However, I will add a stringer down here to lock this leg in, because otherwise I'm relying on just this plywood connection there, and the kids are going to kick that immediately and break it because they're kids and they don't understand or pay attention to stuff like that. So that's the project or process I go through for each project. I'll probably take some quick notes here on a cut list off camera, and then we'll get to ripping plywood down to make this thing quick. So what I have to rip the plywood down is this Kreg Ripcut jig thing. It's a little gimmicky and plasticky, but for 45 bucks, it's a good option, and you can get good results for ripping down sheets of plywood. I do, as gimmicky as it kind of is, prefer this over, say, clamping a level on the piece of wood and riding my saw along that. I don't like that for whatever reason. I don't feel like I get good results out of it. The one thing I would say that is difficult with this is keeping the cut square when you get to the edge, because the saw is well ahead of where you're actually supporting on the edge of the wood to keep it square. But it's like I said, it's doable. We're gonna use this because it's easier than me trying to manhandle it through my shop table saw. So we're gonna go with that and make a cut. I'm gonna, I think, switch you guys over to a time lapse for most of this nonsense because it's some guy cutting plywood. So we'll catch you when we have some parts to actually put together. So I start with marking a line for the cut. That way I have something to follow just to ensure that the jig isn't deviating as I use it. And then I break the edges that I cut with a sanding block and some 120 paper just to kind of clean up anything that frayed or chipped out. From there, I'll switch over to the table saw and make any rips to length. That's me checking that my shot's good. Look at me go. But from there, it's rip everything to length, or width, sorry, and that's all pretty standard stuff for, a table saw. So you guys have all seen that before. So I thought I'd show a neat little trick here, and that is when I'm cutting these shelves, I want them to be the exact thickness of the cabinet storage thing. And so I set my fence to the width of the leg, but I'm going to inset the back on it the thickness of the plywood. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clamp an offcut of the plywood to the fence, and that will offset now the shelves when I'm cutting them the exact thickness that I need. So there's no futzing with measurements here on my crappy table saw. So here we're making that cut that I just explained, and next we'll trim the back stretcher down. So now that we have all the pieces cut and marked, I'm going to drill pocket holes into them using this Kreg jig. That's going to be the easiest way for me to put this together, and I have enough wood, and especially with this stretcher, I think structure, that the kids aren't going to ruin it. And if they do, then you'll see me remake it at some point. So like I said, pocket holes coming up next. So to make my pocket holes, I'm using a Kreg 720 Pro jig. I got this a year or two ago, I think for Christmas, and I really like it. It's very handy, it's very easy to use. The little bit of pocket hole work I've done, I would highly recommend it. When making your pocket holes here, you're going to make sure that the collar on the drill is set to the depth of material you have, which in my case was a little bit difficult because this stuff is technically 12 millimeter and not ½ inch. So if I set to the full ½ inch setting, then I get too deep into the material, and the 1 inch screws then poke through the other side, which is not desirable at all. But switching down to 3/4 inch screws, I don't get enough grab in the wood, and so it's a little bit frustrating and trial and error on getting that set right. Here you'll see me putting the supports that I'm going to use for the shelving, and I'm just screwing those on with 3/4 inch screws. I didn't want to glue them yet in case we ever want to move the height of the shelving around. There you see me determine that I marked out the layout wrong for the end that I put the pocket holes on. So it wasn't a symmetrical layout, and I picked what face of the board I wanted, up and out essentially. And when I did that, my pocket holes ended up on the opposite side for the way I marked out the shelving. So quick remarking and takes care of that. So next we'll start assembly, and to do that, I'm using one of these old style wooden corkscrew clamps to hold the one piece vertical on the bench, and then I can stand up the back and just kind of hold it in place as I screw in. I did have to get a longer drill bit in order to clear the shelf bracket support thing with the pocket holes or pocket screws. And then I'm actually using the shelves that I cut as spacers for where the back attaches. That's the easiest way to get your width right without having to mark and guess and hold something in place. So from there, it's just a lot of 1 inch pocket screws. I did find that the 1 inch screws were working well with this material, which I was surprised about because the last time I had worked with 12 millimeter plywood and tried to do the pocket screws, they kept poking out. So I don't know if this stuff was slightly thicker than the other stuff I got, but I was very happy that it worked because the 3/4 inch screws just don't give a lot of bite into the wood and don't give you a strong connection. Here I'm sliding all of my shelves in place, and I'll use those as then supports to drop in this back panel. That back panel will allow me to square everything up, and again, I'm just attaching with pocket screws and trying to hold everything square and in place. You'll see me put a screw vertical there and use the claw hammer in order to pull up on that board and level everything out flush with the back. That's a nice easy trick to kind of manipulate your wood, and as long as you're not going completely through the piece with that screw, it's on the back and no one's ever going to notice that it's there and that you did that. So very easy trick. Next we'll attach that back stretcher, and that will pretty much wrap up the assembly of this plywood framed box thing. So slide in the shelves and she's good to go. So there it is, a pretty simple plywood box to hold some plastic bins and shelves for their food tray toy things. Overall, pretty satisfied, especially on my plywood and sawhorse workbench thing, and without really having clamps to hold everything square. Really happy. The one thing I am concerned about is these legs do have a decent amount of play that I'm hoping the kids are gentle enough with it, but we'll see. The shelves too, using scraps. I might have to come back and put some more supports in the front so they can't tip them like that. But we're going to go in and see what Kristen thinks with it. We're going to leave it unfinished and just put it in the house and let them play with it, and whatever happens to it, happens to it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, learned a little something if you're going to try, doing something like this yourself. And until next time, thanks for watching and have a great day.